This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Oh, I've realized after I did this video, so I'll put this at the beginning. This is Quincy from the future coming in here and making an editing note. I realized that I was kind of focused on the guys who have been playing right now as the underachievers and not really focusing on somebody like Deshaun Watson, who has not played a full game in a very long time for this team. Obviously an underachiever there. I mean, you can make the point that while the quarterback room without him has overachieved, they have also underachieved if you just look at the stats. So quarterback in general, you can add this to the underachieve. I think either way you look at it, I think in some ways the quarterback room has overachieved. If you look at what they've been able to accomplish from a win-loss standpoint, but if you're looking at it statistically, what they've been able to accomplish outside of Deshaun Watson, it's also been kind of disappointing. And Deshaun Watson has been disappointing and underachieved just because when he's been out there, you've had one game where it felt like it should. Every other game kind of had these weird moments where you wish you could have gotten more out of them. And then obviously this whole shoulder injury, it's been not helping his case there. But even if you were just looking at the 3-game sample for Deshaun Watson when he was here, it was under what you would expect. We even did that on our first quarter thing, but I thought in the back of my head, since we covered that in the first quarter report cards, I didn't really have to bring it up, but I just thought about it. I know people are going to bring up Deshaun Watson and the quarterbacks in this whole thing. Yes, I would put them also on a pile on this list. So Deshaun Watson underachieving. Back to the first quarter of the season, when we reviewed that, his stats are under the bar of what we expected in every single way, even if you adjust for the games that he's missed. And then you can go over to DTR and PJ Walker. Again, win-loss standpoint, I feel like they've overachieved, and you should be happy with what you've gotten out of them. Statistically, you know, the turnovers have been crazy. The turnover-worthy plays have been even crazier. They lead the league in that standpoint of turnover-worthy plays. So also underachieving, because while I don't expect greatness from backup quarterback, I do expect that you should be like, instead of 30th or 33 and below 32, you should probably be like 25 to 28, you know, in those statistical categories. So, you know, just still underachieving there as well. But that's just my 2 cents on that whole thing. I knew it would get brought up. So yesterday I did a video about the Browns overachievers, of players that I thought were playing higher than what you would have expected to for one reason or the other. But we appreciate balance here. And that's what we're here to talk about, is the underachievers, who on this Cleveland Browns team has disappointed so far. Now, that doesn't mean they'll disappoint for the rest of the year. That doesn't mean that they've been disappointing in every game. But if you look at their overall sample throughout the year so far, it's been a bit of a letdown. Now, I will preference this list by saying this. I feel like we forget the team is 4-3 at this point, and they're not 4-3 because a ton of players are disappointing right now. Now, if that changes and they have a sub 500 record later in the season, then obviously things change. But at this point, not a lot of players have been really that disappointing. So even some of the guys I'm going to have on this list, I will defend a little bit, because I don't think that they have been as disappointing as the overachievers, because I think this team has overachieved. If you look at the circumstances that they have dealt with, nobody would anticipate that they would be sitting here at 4-3. So that being said, that disclaimer out there. So if you see a player that you like on this list, if you see a player that you don't like on this list, take it easy on them. Let's take a break. Let's not get so reactionary about it. But let's talk about the underachievers. First guy on the list, unfortunately, Jedrick Wills. People expected Jed this season to take the leap, right? Okay, you had a rough year last year, but you were getting used to 2 different quarterbacks. They put the 5th-year option on you, so you felt like, hey, This will be the year that Jedrick Wills going to take a leap. Deshaun going to be back there consistently. He's had a whole training camp to protect Deshaun. And the thing that concerns me the most about Jedrick Wills is that he seems to be significantly worse when Deshaun Watson specifically is out there. And that's not good. Now, whether that has more to do with Deshaun Watson or Jedrick Wills, I don't know. I've seen Jedrick Wills be bad with all three quarterbacks on the field at this point this year, but it seems like his problems are amplified by Deshaun Watson. And that is more concerning to me if this is more of a fit thing than anything, which means that there's really no solution with Jedrick Wills within himself, right? If this were a playing bad thing, I think he'll be able to fix it. But if this is he's not compatible with how Deshaun Watson plays quarterback thing, let's be concerned. Now, again, we've only seen him play 3 games with Deshaun Watson back there. I think another thing to look at with Jed is that the teams that are very familiar with him tend to get him easier, right? You look at the Baltimore game specifically and the Pittsburgh game specifically, 2 games where he gave up a lot of pressures. I think that's no mistake that happened between division opponents because those are the teams that are ultra familiar with him and were able to take advantage of him. He's played better down the stretch the last 3 weeks. I thought he was fine against the 49ers. I thought he was fine against the Colts, and I thought he was fine against the Seahawks. I didn't think he was anything bad in that game, and I don't think you could blame the game on Jedrick Wills or blame a lot of things on him from the last 3 weeks of football. But again, you're also playing against teams from other conferences and other divisions that aren't necessarily as familiar with you as the AFC North is, and I'm concerned that this recent streak of good games could turn sour once you go up against Baltimore again and Pittsburgh, the 2 teams specifically that gave Jedrick Wills the most hell. He's got to find a way to not get beat inside so quickly against those opponents, right? He doesn't find enough job the last few weeks, but it just has not clicked against division opponents. And if you look at his worst games in his career, they tend to be against division opponents. So Jed's got to figure that out. Jed's got to get that right. Another player who's been underperforming has been Wyatt Teller. It's been a while since we've been sharing pancake blocks on Twitter and talking about the pancake factory and selling these pancakes. It ain't been that with Wyatt Teller in a little while. He ain't been that guy. He's been a decent guard, but he hasn't been all pro top guard in the NFL, Wyatt Teller, in a little bit of time. The run block stuff, he's made some very silly mistakes in run blocking. He's made some very silly mistakes in pass blocking. He's just been inconsistent. He's looked he hasn't looked anything close to what he did in 2019. 2019, he wasn't any good. But 2020, he hasn't looked anything close to that player on run blocking or pass blocking. Now, this week, I thought that you saw against Seattle more of a comeback to that form because the run game was really able to get going. He was a big part of that. So maybe this is more or less Wyatt Teller catching fire for the second half of this season. But if we're just talking about the first half of the season, have not been overly thrilled about what I've seen from Wyatt Teller, if I'm being honest with you. Another player who has underperformed expectation is Elijah Moore. Now, he had a good couple moments in that Colts game, and I thought he was a big part of the reason why the Browns won in that game. But outside of that, Elijah Moore just has not been the consistently be like 200. That's not good, man. So would love to see more out of Jordan Akins in the upcoming parts of the season, because he's been thoroughly disappointing so far for the Cleveland Browns. And I think him, especially in this situation where you've played so many backup quarterbacks throughout the season, it makes no sense for him to be this disappointing when it comes to production. You would think the tight ends would become more emphasized when you have a backup quarterback. Right now, the only guy who's really stepped up in this backup quarterback situation is Amari Cooper. And then there was a couple times where Elijah Moore stepped up. But it's mainly been Amari Cooper. So it's been a disappointment from Jordan Akins. The expectations weren't sky high, but they are certainly higher than 26 yards in 8 games or 7 games. And that's not good. Greg Newsome is a guy who's been slightly underperforming. Look, there's been moments where Greg's been great this year. There have been moments where Greg's been the reason why the defense can get scored on. It's been an up and down season for him. It's also been an up and down season for him as far as health goes. And this is concerning given that health wasn't necessarily a strong point in his first 2 years in his career. We just want to see Greg Newsome make more plays like he did his rookie year. He hasn't made those same plays at the same volume. And he's been outperformed, quite frankly, by a 3rd-round pick in Martin Emerson. And no disrespect to him. I think Martin Emerson's playing at a 1st-round pick level. But, you know, Greg Newsome, we thought he was somebody who could come in and potentially be a replacement for Denzel Ward. And right now, he's been a supplement for Denzel Ward. So you would like to see more consistent play out of him. Another underachiever at this point would be Juan Thornhill. I don't think much of what gets Juan Thornhill graded is very much his fault. I think it's bad linebacker play. JOK's been iffy in run defense at times for this team. He's either great or he's not. It's really been an up and down experience from 6, but Thornhill, you know, you would just like to see him make more plays than what he's done, especially downfield. This team has let more than a handful of big plays happen, and he was the guy that was supposed to come in and stop that. The faucet has not turned off on that so far this year, and you need him to step up and stop some of these big plays. I know it's a tough ask, but they asked a lot out of him thinking that he would bring that to this defense. And so far, there's been big plays coming from 0. There's been big plays coming from number 1. Sometimes there are big plays coming from number 22, but usually one's in the equation when you're looking at big plays being made. And just because these players are underperforming doesn't mean that I think they're awful, that I think they're terrible, that I think they'll never live up to expectations. I just think that we had an expectation for them. They're under that expectation. That's it. They can get over that expectation at any point in this season if they consistently play well. I think we have a tendency, especially in this new modern sports media landscape, that the second you say something that's not positive about a player, people assume you mean everything negative that you've ever heard about a player. Like if I say something that's not positive about Jedrick Wills, I'm just saying that one thing is not positive about Jedrick Wills. My complaints about Jedrick Wills are simply he gets beat inside too often and he doesn't make guys run the arc often enough. He can make those things happen. I will have less to complain. What I don't really think are valid criticisms of him are stuff about his heart, his effort level. I think that those things are very much overblown. I don't think Jedrick Wills' issues on Sundays have much to do with effort and have more to do with the lack of ability to stop guys from beating them inside. I think the effort part of it is irrelevant, but people make a big deal out of that. I'm not saying that Wyatt Teller took the money and got lazy. Like every time I do something that's not necessarily pointing in the positive direction, there are people who take what I say, notice that, hey, it's a criticism, and then lop on like 8 different criticisms to what I said, and then come back mad at me as if I said the 8 things that they lopped on, right? Like if I say that Baker Mayfield just wasn't good enough for the Browns to be able to hit their ceiling as a team at quarterback, what I'm not saying is that he is terrible and belongs in the XFL, but people will lop on all of these other negative things to something you said simply because what you said was kind of in the direction of what they're saying. All I'm saying about the players on this list, Jedrick Wills, Wyatt Teller, Elijah Moore, Jordan Akins, Greg Newsome, Juan Thornhill, is that they are underperforming right now. I'm not saying that they're terrible. I'm not saying that they're trash. I'm not saying they need to be traded or cut. I'm not suggesting those things. What I am saying is that they're underperforming. Here's where they're underperforming. And if they can get past this level, I will be thrilled, because then they would be at expectation or above it. So that's it. That's it. I don't know. It seems like recently it's just more of what is said in general. People lop onto it and then try to use it as ammo in whatever war they're fighting with a group of other fans. And it's just, I want to make myself very clear. I have these criticisms of the players, but don't add no extra criticisms that I didn't say into these criticisms, because far too often I get people coming back very furious with me about stuff that I never said. It's stuff that they imagine I said, because they heard it somewhere else, heard me say something not positive about that player, and then lock that on to that player, and that criticism. So just saying, let's just be nicer to people, be nicer and more charitable to these athletes. If you have a criticism, just leave it at that criticism. It doesn't have to get personal, and you most certainly never have to at a player all of these criticisms. But that's it. Those are the underperforming players. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.